Welcome to Culture Before Content. Culture Before Content, from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. And now, here's your host, David Duarte.
Hey, welcome to the show. It's episode 15. Welcome to Culture Before Content. My name is David Duarte, your host. This podcast is presented by Music for All and with a special thanks to Yamaha, our national presenting sponsor. I'm David Duarte, your host. Thanks for coming to make this our culture today. Our mission is to positively create, provide, and expand life-changing experiences through music. As we explore classroom culture with our guests today, I hope their insights spark new ideas and inspire positive changes in your classroom. We're thrilled that today we get to announce that we are on Facebook Live for the first time. So those of you who are following us on that format, welcome to the show. And we are also live on YouTube. If you're enjoying our live content, don't forget that you can interact with us in real time. Your engagement truly enhances our community and our broadcast. For you YouTube viewers, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video on your social media to help spread the word. We're excited to connect with our Facebook Live audience. Feel free to share, like, and comment to join the conversation. Did you miss the live show? No worries. This broadcast will remain available right here on Facebook and YouTube for you to enjoy at your convenience. And following the show, for those of you who prefer audio, catch our podcast episodes every Monday. Just search for the Music for All Podcast Network on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Tune in on the go and keep our culture alive wherever we go. All righty. So for those of you live to the show for the first time, this is episode 15. We've had lots of good guests. I would encourage you to go back, watch as many of the shows that you like. We've got many different things. We've got student leadership. We've got HR specialists. We've got successful band directors. We've had how to introduce yourself to your class, classroom setup, so many things. Just go take a look. We've had so many powerful guests. But last week, let's talk a little bit about last week for those of you who are regulars here. We had Jenna Moffett, who is an HR specialist from Arizona. We had a nice talk about the principal perspective on being a band director. We talked about, now that she's in the district office, we talked about getting hired and even talked about evaluations. And I think it was an extremely powerful show and very helpful. We had some great questions. And I think if you get a chance, go back and watch that show. But let's get on to today's show. I am excited. Today is Dr. Myra Rhoden. She serves as the Director of Bands and Fine Arts Department Chairperson at Fayette County High School in Fayetteville, Georgia. She's been awarded the National Band Association Citations of Excellence on 4 occasions and has been named Star Teacher for FCHS and was named Teacher of the Year on 2 occasions. So without any further special ado, I don't even know if that was English, Dr. Myra Rhoden.
Hello.
Welcome. Hello. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here with you today.
I am very excited to be here today. So let's start off this show. Let's talk about tell us a little about yourself, who you are, and just a little, let's get to know Dr. Myra Rhoden.
All right. Well, I am from Tuskegee, Alabama, not too far from where I live now. A graduate of Tuskegee Institute High School. And I went to college at the University of Alabama twice for my undergraduate degree and my master's in music education. I received my doctorate in conducting from the University of Southern Mississippi with Dr. Tom Friskillo. I have been teaching 30 years. This is year 30 for me. I did 3 in middle school, quickly realized that was not for me and moved to high school. And I've been in high school for the last 27 years. And as you just put on the screen, I'm the founder of the Athena Music and Leadership Camp, which is an all-girls music and leadership program for middle and high school students.
That is absolutely fantastic. I always believe in providing opportunities wherever we go with whatever we do. So let me ask you a really quick question, because you said it I like creating some connection. So do you feel like high school is just a calling? Like, once you started the middle school, was high school, was that your beck and call?
I think so. It's kind of interesting. I was always the one that didn't want to teach beginners because I didn't want students to not know how to play because of me. And my very first job was teaching beginners all day. It was an all sixth grade school in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And so all I had was beginners because that's when they started school. So that was some kind of weird thing about me saying that and that being my
Yeah,
first job. But
my,
yeah, I've
my
always loved
relation
high school.
Yeah, my
Mhm.
relation to that was that I started teaching general music because there was a demand for it. I went to University of Arizona, and there was no music programs in the elementary schools. So we college kids got to go be the elementary people. Well, that actually provided some opportunity. But then I found out that high school band was super cool, and I just felt too
Yeah.
close to age. Yeah, and then it kind of overtook, and now here we are. And yeah, so I hear things that you're about to retire. Is that true?
Yes. Only less than a month left.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Yeah, and I was telling you earlier, yeah, don't ever use the phrase, "What are you gonna do? Fire me?" Because it's never a good idea. But
That's
I
right.
retired in 2019, and the smile is permanent. But unlike you, I got to retire and go back to teaching high school band because I left it for 11 years. But
Oh,
let's
wow.
enough about that connection. Let's talk about high school band. I like reflecting on your career. So, like high school band, I met you through, I don't know how, but I think we just became Facebook friends, and I just started following you. And I always laugh because anytime, I hate to say this, but no, I don't hate to say that's a bad word. Every time University of Alabama does good in something, your Facebook page, and that's how I think I came to get to know you, and I started following you. And you are always so active with your students and your kids. But
Yeah.
looking back at 30-year careers, what's the one big impact of your culture of your high school band directing that you like to focus on? What's the first thing that pops in your head?
I like to make sure that the students can survive after they leave me. So whether it's
Wow.
music, whether it's life, problem solving skills, um, seeing a problem and making sure that they don't give up, but they figure out ways that they can get through whatever situation that comes to them, whether it's music related or not. So that's
Well,
what I've
let's
always tried to do.
Well, let's explore that because I think that one of the things that I say is I don't really want everyone to become a professional musician, and heaven forbid they
Yeah.
become music teachers like us. I just want them to be lifelong appreciators of music.
Right.
And so in my classroom, I know you have high expectations. I know, and so what are some of the things that you do to instill that music in your kids? I mean, what is it like? What does it look like if I was to show up and go, "Hi, I'm here for band for the first day. I'm going to be your fourth chair bassoonist." I don't know. I don't play bassoon. Um, but what would I expect in Myra's classroom?
I think you would expect a culture, a welcoming culture. We have students who move in. We don't have a lot of students who move in and out all the time, but when we do have students to move in, the other students are always so welcoming to them. Sometimes the students who are new, it kind of takes them aback a little bit because they weren't expecting to be so accepted immediately. And that's one thing I can say, I've been very proud of is that our school is just it's a true representation of the entire student body and not just one section of the student body. So our students come from everywhere. Their parents come from everywhere. We have students who live in $1 million homes and parents who live in apartments that work 3 jobs, and they all get together and they all make music together, and it doesn't matter where they're from or what they do. They learn how to get along, and they learn how to just do band.
Yeah, but it sounds like to me that that your students do a lot of that work for you. How did you get them to that point? Go ahead.
Yeah, so it starts with the little things. My high school band director was like that. He's a very big influence on me. He's passed away now, but we always did things together. So when I became the head director here, it would start by band camp, walking with your section to eat, eating with your section. We used to go away for band camp, making sure nobody is left behind, making sure there's not a big gap in the group, that we all move as one. And so that was a little bit of a different idea for the students when I got there. I don't think I got a lot of pushback, but I got a lot of side eyes as to why is she making us do this? And so, just those little things, I had someone who worked with me, Dr. Andy Poor, who used to call it mandatory fun. And so, we have these things where the students have to participate. We take them bowling, you have to bowl. You can't just sit there and watch everybody else. We're going to have a band camp dance. You have to be a part of that as well. You have to do these team building activities, whether you want to or not. And sometimes those students just, they just need that little bit of a push. And then when they learn how to get along, they learn how to make friends, then the music making part becomes a whole lot easier.
So do you have any specific roles that your students like, what's your band leadership look like, for your student leadership? And, how do you, and, you're fostering these wonderful kids to take care of each other, but do you have a specific leadership council that you have? What are your kids like?
So, like many other programs, we have two different sides, one appointed and one elected. So the appointed leadership is usually through marching band, your drum majors, your section leaders, brass woodwind captain, all of that. And then the elected side is your band president, vice president, treasurer. We added a social media person. And yes, the students do run the social media page for the band. We trust them with that. And yes, I do have the password just in case, but they have been awesome with that. The interesting part about the elected side is that the outgoing seniors are the ones who get to nominate people for the positions. So we do leadership training for everyone. Anyone who wants to be a part of it can be a part of leadership, to be considered for this. I would like to be considered for that. But then the outgoing students get to say, yeah, I think these people might be pretty good for president. And so they come up with a slate based on the student interest and what they've noticed. And that gives them some buy-in too, because they get to leave the legacy the way they want. And it doesn't become a popularity contest. They really take the job seriously.
Yeah, that's always been my fear, is because popularity contests, I think I've made a career out of taking over band programs because, it's either been circumstantial, just that's how it is, and like I used to live in Tennessee. I was there for a couple of years, moved out here to the Pacific Northwest. So I still feel like I'm the new guy, even though I'm almost completed my third year. And finally the kids will all be mine. But I inherited a senior only council, and that was it. And so I actually did what you did and created the leadership positions appointed, and right now it's been more like on the ends of like who's interested, and I think there's being more and more buy-in and more buy-in and more buy-in on that, so not that those kids can appoint it. But I really like this idea of where that senior leadership is appointing the kids. So is it just appointing, or is there an application process for other types? I mean, is it a combination of the two?
Yeah, it's a combination. We have leadership training that anybody can come to, even if you're a freshman, but you have to be a sophomore in order to apply for leadership. We just want them to have that extra year of experience where they're not just deer in headlights the whole year. They can actually focus on what's going on. Then they can start to lead. So that's just a personal preference. I know a lot of people have, leaders as sophomores as well. But there is a leadership process. There's an application process. They have to get a quick recommendation form by their teachers, because we want to make sure that who we see in the band room is who they are outside of the band room. And so the teachers really give us a perspective on that. And then, but the seniors only get a chance to help with the ballot. We have the current freshmen, sophomores, and juniors who actually elect the students. So they just get to help, with these are the applications, these are the names. What do you think? All right. And then we vote, and then we go from there.
Do you have any methods that you use to train them or to support your student leaders, or is something formalized?
Yeah, it's kind of from year to year, it kind of changes, depends on the needs of the students. Pretty much, the same things that everybody else may use, throughout the country, just teaching them how to self-advocate, teaching them how to talk to one another, how to send emails, how to communicate, how to help, how to teach. We actually have sessions based on that because, sometimes we have to say, I need you to run this sectional. But if you've never taught your students how to teach, then they're not going to get anything done. Yeah.
So that was like I said, I always like these questions because then it goes down to how would you define your culture for your student leadership? What is their culture?
I think, our student leaders, I think now is maybe a little bit different than pre-pandemic, as all students are. I think pre-pandemic, our student leaders may have been a little bit more aggressive as far as making sure things are done. Now they are a lot more nurturing. They're a lot more careful with what they say and how they say. Not that pre-pandemic leaders were like mean or nasty, but they are a lot more hesitant to do things now. And so now it's more of a, yes, you can do it. It's okay to say something to them. No, they're not going to bite your head off. It's okay to want to help. And so that's what we're kind of working through with them now. But, they still love the band. They love the school. They want others to be a part of the program, which is always a plus.
So let's define some of these student leadership roles. So you've got your marching program, you've got your concert band program. How many concert bands do you have? Just curiously.
We have 3.
Okay, so that's you got the top group, the middle group is like the freshman group, and then the other group and the audition group, so to speak. So in marching band, is it voluntary or is it mandatory? Is it
voluntary?
Yeah, that's always, I've been talking to this more and more, and I think I used to be that mandatory guy. Everyone does it, and now that I've gotten older, you can actually build it bigger if it's voluntary.
Yeah, I grew up in that culture too. Actually, even to be a dancer or on the color guard, you had to play an instrument first in my high school band. Yes.
Oh, talk about that. That's interesting. Where did that perspective come from?
I think it was I think he just wanted the students to understand the band culture first. And then you can do other things within that band culture. I don't know. I wish, that was a conversation I could have had with him before he passed away, but that was definitely something that we had to do. At my current school, when I was assistant director, and actually for many years as head director, it's always been voluntary, but students who did not do marching band would have a different type of assignment to help get them playing a little bit more than the students who are in marching band. Because the students who are in marching band, they're performing so much and they get extra help because of our section coaches that come in that sometimes that the students in the class don't get, at least during the fall. So we had to try to figure out a way for them to improve just as fast as the students who are in marching band, who had a tendency to move a little bit faster simply because the instrument was on their face a lot more. Well,
because that always leads me to a different type of question. Because like I said, we always talk about student leadership. My program, I don't even have a marching band. I don't know how I found a program. Pacific Northwest. Apparently it rains. It rained all day today. It's been fantastic. So how does the student leadership transition between marching band to concert band? Is it more of a section leader role when you get to the concert band, or how is it different when you go from fall to the concert season?
Yeah, the leaders in marching band become kind of default leaders for the entire program, even though they don't have that title, so to speak. So they have a tendency to take care of the students, whether they're in the marching band or not. They get to know them. They help them when needed. But then we also have our band president and all of those as well to help out. And also, during the band class, we may ask our section leaders or our first chair players to have a little bit more of a leadership role as well within, band number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Yeah, and so it's like band number 3 is always like, it's like my cup of tea, is like trying to figure out how do we get our top group is amazing. Then how do we get that freshman group? When do they start becoming leaders? At what point have you noticed that your freshmen start to learn what you've been teaching, so to speak? How does that leadership transmit down, or do you have anything specific that happens?
I think it happens a lot quicker with the students in marching band because they see the older students a lot more than the students who aren't. If they're just in the class and it's mostly ninth grade or ninth and 10th graders, they're not around the 11th and 12th graders as much as the students who are in marching band. So what I see is that the students who do it have the tendency to want to volunteer, so we may say, hey, let's go into small groups. Who would like to lead today? And it's usually the kids in marching band who raise their hands first. Not always, but that usually happens first. And so we don't necessarily appoint the leaders, in our third band class, but we will give them an opportunity and say, hey, David, we want you to lead the trombone sectional today. Or, hey, Myra, we want you to lead the clarinet sectional today. And it happens. And, it's interesting watching the kids who don't expect you to call their names to do that. And, the ones who actually enjoy it afterwards and how they end up volunteering in weeks to come. Seeing that growth is always good.
So that kind of translates over, because I think student leadership is one thing, but it really answers, this is one of my cultural things, classroom management. Because those of you who have never taught a marching band before, it's classroom management. It's like the accelerated class for classroom management that kind of teaches itself. But I think that the classroom management starts with the school day band and then translate, the marching band kind of passes it back. But, what's your classroom management? How does marching band help classroom management, or what kind of classroom management do you use in school that translates to marching band? Either way.
That's a good question. I don't know if I've ever thought about that before. I was always told, in my training, if you keep them playing and keep them interested, you won't have classroom management issues. So, I know if there's a time where I find kids get chatty for whatever reason, I always look to me and see, okay, what am I doing wrong? What's going on here today? And it could be something that happened outside of school that they just need to get off their chest, and we need to have a conversation about and keep it moving. But that's really it, just keeping them engaged, and you don't really have the classroom management issues.
Yeah, and that's my suspicion, because this is one of those conversations I want to have with all my guests in the future, because if you don't have classroom management issues, you don't realize that other people do. And so it might be one of those times, now that you're retiring, it might be one of those times to go back and analyze what were the things that you did. And engagement, I believe, is the answer. In my belief, that classroom management and, rehearsal structure, can kids talk? Are they interactive? Do you what does your concert band classroom look like? Or how is it different than your marching band classroom? What are some of the, how does Myra allow her classroom to act and engage? What's your classroom strategy like?
Sometimes, if I find that students may be a little chatty, it's because they're trying to help each other, not because they're not focused. I hate to say that that may help happen on the marching field a little bit more, even though we do have structure, and we do have teachers, we do have people on the field and in the tower and all over the place. But that goes back to the students being nurturing and trying to help each other, and so sometimes they just want to jump in if they see something wrong, especially, if the teacher's on the other side of the section and they see something over here. And sometimes we do have to say, wait, hold up, give the adults a chance to fix it. And then we'll give you to say what you need to say. But, as far as having just disrespectful or just doing all the bad things, you're right. If you don't really have those issues, it's kind of hard to walk in, in places that do. Yeah.
The administrator in me has always, I believe that when I walk into a band that gets probably 2s or 3s at festival, that the problem isn't necessarily music. It usually is quite heavy more related to classroom management. So, let's play pretensies. Let's say Myra gets a new job next year. I was bored in retirement for my 3 days, and I've decided to now take over. Blah blah blah. So you walk into a band. What are some of your what are your expectations when you walk into a classroom, or even when you're an honor band teacher? You have expectations. What does it look like when you start a process?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is just be clear with the students with what you expect. Where do you want them to put their book bags? Where do you want them to put their cases? Do you want them to line them up? Do you want it to look a mess? How do you want their book bags under the chair, against the wall? All of those little things have to be defined. I tell the students how you do anything is how you do everything. And so if you're going to do this messy, and so you'll probably play messy too. So, it just starts with just defining the expectations up front, but then it continues with holding them to the expectations if something happens. I may a little bit, like, I don't want to blow it out of proportion, but I might do it just a little bit, even for the tiniest of things, because I want them to understand that I am paying attention to details. And so, yes, I do see that your book bag is not where I told you to put it. And yes, I do expect you to put it where it needs to be. So you need to go ahead and fix that right now. But if they know those little details like that are being paid attention to, they have a tendency to do the other things a little bit better too, because they know you're paying attention to them. So I think you're right about, the groups like that, because if you're not paying attention to the behavioral details or what the room looks like, those details, then you're probably not paying attention to the musical details either.
Well, let's go back to the students then. How helpful are your students in maintaining some of that? Because it sounds like to me that you are blessed with a student population that knows what's expected and can kind of stop some of those things. The way I've approached the show a lot of times is because I'm horrible. I go and read Facebook. I go and read Instagram. I do all those amazing things. But then I try to process it. How would I do it if I was giving advice? Or if I walk into another classroom. And I love that you say clear expectations. Vanessa Cobb on one of our shows before changed me forever. And Vanessa, I'm going to keep talking to you about this because I hope she's listening, but my room has stayed infinitely clean. I finally found a process that she mentioned, and I just let my kids take it over, and it helps. And it was oddly as the chairs go to the front of the room instead of the side, and it just made all the clear expect. And for you, where do the book bags go? And that's like me, so what other expectations besides book bags? What about folder? What about pencil? Let's go through what does Dr. Myra Rhoden's classroom look like? Oh wait, we have a comment. Dr. Rhoden has high expectations of all his students, and they tend to step up, behave, and play their most beautiful music. She is responsible for producing the best of the best. The students love her. Well, duh. We're meeting her now. Like I said, I've been a fanboy for you for a while. But I'm like, so far high expectations, also clear expectations.
Mm-hmm.
But what are your expectations for a folder, a pencil? And then it's is the room set up before the kids get there? Do you train the kids? Talk about it.
I think it's a little bit of everything, because another thing that we talk about is being flexible. So, if I've had meetings all morning and color guard was in the band room the night before, and we didn't get a chance to set up the chairs. The first time it happens, the students will walk in and go, "What in the world is going on?" But then I say, "Go get your chair and your stand, set it up where it normally is every day." And they go, "Okay," and it's done. So, yes, have the expectations, but they also need to understand that sometimes things don't go the way, and that's that life skill. Sometimes things don't go the way that it's supposed to. So yes, they know to come in. It's okay to socialize. We want them to socialize. That's a part of band. But get your instrument, get your music, have a seat. We're going to start on time. If it's an after school rehearsal, we're going to start on time. I'm not going to waste your time during rehearsal, so don't waste my time setting up. If you're going to, if you need to use the restroom, if you need to do all of that, they know all of those things that they need to do for that as well. Our classes are short. We're on a 7-period day, so I only see them for about 50 minutes every day, but I do get to see them every day. Marching band, of course, is a little bit different than that. And so we have expectations for that too, but it's just a normal rehearsal. And, our band number 3 rehearsals look the same as band number 1. The only difference is the skill level and the music that we're playing. But, there's not going to be a higher expectation for the older kids. We have the high expectation for the 9th graders, just like the 12th graders. So as they, flow through the program, they know what to do. Yeah, I'm hoping that answers your question.
All right. Let's talk about those high expectations, because I think that might be, that might be the secret to success for you. So like, um, let's just go for funsies. Let's go for your last performance assessment. Is it called concert performance assessment in Georgia? I'm trying to remember what it's
It's
called.
large group performance evaluation.
Okay,
Okay,
LGPE, right?
LGPE.
Like
Yes.
everything's an acronym.
Yes.
Let's say this. What was your programming like for your what was your programming like for your top group? Let's start there.
So we did a grade 6 program for the top group. Our second
Woo!
group did a grade 4 program, and this year our third group did a grade 2-3 program. So like many others, we are still doing, in COVID recovery and all of that. Those kids are cycling through from middle school. Our seniors started online. Most of our students were online their freshman year. Over 50% of the band I did not see until May of 2021.
Wow.
So, this is one of the larger senior classes that we've had. And the fact that they started high school band online was absolutely crazy. Bands 2 and 3 probably got hit the most, from the pandemic as far as skill level. But one thing I will say is that those students they're dying to learn anything. I mean, they do a really, really good job. So that's what the programming looks like as far
Well,
as as far as grade level.
that's amazing. You got them to grade 6 because, I'm looking at because I took over the program the year after COVID. So I literally started them when they came back to school. I got, even though they had the former band director before I got there, they never got to meet her, so to speak. And because I was the first one, so I know what they were like when I inherited them from the start.
Mhm.
And we have come a galaxy since that started. But how did you get? What were some of the just going back? Oh, we have a question. I'm going to get that
Mm.
one first. All right. This is a great question. What are
Ooh.
some ways you cultivate intrinsic motivation in your students? Great question, Matthew.
So, we started this. I don't want to call it a campaign. I guess it kind of is. Hashtag get better. And that's one thing that's kind of helped us post pandemic is making sure that we celebrate all of the little things that the students do really well. So if a student's tone quality is better today than it was yesterday, we make a big deal out of it. If they played the scale better today or they played something in time. And what I found is that helps with that intrinsic motivation. I'm not sure how, but it does. Maybe it's because they know that they may get called out for something good, regardless of how small or large it is. That we're not always focused on the seniors who are, getting scholarship offers or whatever, that the freshmen, are celebrated just as much as everyone else. I think that now that I think about it, making the band room a safe space for students to mess up and make mistakes may be a part of that as well, because that means the students aren't afraid to try new things. So,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
Dave Coons a few weeks ago had something that I've been using in my classroom a lot. Like I said, I get free professional development every Sunday, 4 o'clock Eastern, 7
Hmm.
p.m. Oh no, it's 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. Sorry, Ben. I always screw that up for some whatever reason. But my point, he had a phrase that was called perfect intent, and I always thought of that because we always say there's perfectionists, and I always have these kids that are perfectionists. But when he used the word perfect intent, it kind of helped me put it in the way that I'm trying to get my kids. It's okay to make a mistake because I've never been a perfect person myself. I'm a pretty good
Hmm.
musician, but I make mistakes every single time I play.
Hmm.
But that perfect intent I think is where you were leading with some of that things where it's okay to make a mistake because you're going to learn from that mistakes. And maybe that's one of
Hmm.
the things that we lost in COVID time is the kids didn't
Hmm.
have a chance to make a mistake and have a corrective
Hmm.
behavior and find out that it was okay. Because like I said, when I was going back to that grade 6 question, because if your band's playing 2-3 when they're a freshman and they're playing grade 6 by the time they're junior, senior, something's happening to get them up that stair step. So I always think, we are a people pleasing society for the most part.
Hmm.
And so when your kids are in band, I'm sure your students, hey, look what I can do. Or, hey, I learned the, F sharp Mixolydian scale. It's great. I don't know why I learned it, but I learned it.
Right.
It was a great jazz tune. Just throwing that out there. But anyway, so maybe that thing is that the intrinsic motivation becomes because someone who's sitting in front of them models it for their class every day, and they want that attention because it feels good. So what are the what are some feel goods from Dr. Myra Rhoden? If I came in, give me some example feel goods.
Well, the feel goods aren't always music related. Sometimes we'll start class and say, hey, tell me what's the good news today. And someone will raise their hand and say, I made an A on my chemistry test. And we will, clap for them. Or it's my birthday and we will clap for them. Or, someone could say, I was on time for this class today, when they know they're always late for that particular class. And we'll go, yay, let's make sure you do it again tomorrow. I had a student this year to say, I got to meet my cows this past weekend. I said, you did what? Yes, she raises cows. And then we had the entire class got a chance to help name the new cow that was just born, the calf. So that was quite an interesting one. But that I think is a part of trust as well, because everybody's class, they can't raise their hand and be proud of the fact that they made an A on a test, because somebody may say, oh, they're trying to be a show off, or oh, you're trying to be better than us. But no, here we're celebrating all of those little things. And so that goes to the music too. We've had students, they'll play a couple of times in front of the class, and then on the third or fourth day, it may sound, or even the next week, it'll sound better or different. And, we have to make sure we point that out. So, man, that sounds so much better than it did last week. And then the class will clap for them. Those little things like that. And I think that kind of helps with the motivation too. It definitely helps them with the nerves. Playing in front of the class is not anything new. Everybody gets to do it a lot.
Does everyone play in front of you at least at some point in class, like by themselves?
Yeah, at some point. It could be something as simple as, let me hear measure, 27. And you just go down the line and make sure everybody's articulating the same way or something like that. But even that can be a little nerve-wracking for students. So just getting them to.
I started giving my students Who Wants to Be a Millionaire rules on that, so they can phone a friend. They can ask somebody to play with them. They can actually pass. But David Coons taught me on his show. He's like, if they pass, then they gotta play in front of you at some point in the next week. So I started doing that, and that actually, I've learned a lot from the show. And even the sharing out thing, that was also a Matt Wood suggestion on week 1, which I found to be extremely helpful. Like, for those of you listening, if you're listening live, try it out tomorrow. Like, hey, who did something fun this weekend? Who wants to share? And he's right. There are kids that have shared that I would have never, ever, and that actually can help lead into playing. And so my kids, the younger ones are actually this year, I think, because of probably this show, they're not so scared to play in front of each other, just because it's become part of the culture and part of the nature.
Right.
So there's another thing I'm pretty sure that your kids, which is they're looking for that smile to come at them to make sure that they're getting that. Like, when it sounds good, I am sure you are all over that. But let's talk about some of the other side of that. So what are some things that would be corrective? How do you corrective? Like, if a kid's not, I know.
I try to. Yeah, the one thing that I try to do, if someone's not doing something, if they're not behaving the way they're supposed to, I try to just give them the teacher look, or just make sure that they see that I see them, or, just kind of point at them. or the one thing I like is if I'm talking and I'll go, isn't that right, David? And they'll go, what? Oh, yes. And so they figured out that if I call their name like that, then they know that I see them doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. And sometimes the kids just throw their hand up and go, I got you. And they stop it. And you don't have to say anything. And that goes a long way, but that comes with building relationships with the kids. You have to know their mannerisms. You have to pay attention to them to know that when something is not quite right. And when something is not quite right, sometimes you can just give them that teacher look and it fixes it.
Oh,
but if it doesn't work, then I might have to call you out.
here's a great one. I don't remember who shared it with me, but I tried it out and I accidentally did it in front of like everybody because we call them commons concerts where I have an all indoor school. So on Fridays, every once in a while, I have the jazz band play. It's just rehearsal. It's just that we play the music. And it was just say, okay. And that's the response. If I'm giving a corrective behavior, don't defend it. Don't try to give me an excuse.
Yes.
Teach the kids to just say, okay. And so now I've got my students doing it. I'm like, hey, let's just practice. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. And it's becoming, it's become the cutest little thing because I said, we can talk about the defense or the excuses, later, but I would really just like say in terms of rehearsal, which is more of an us as opposed to a me, just say, okay, hey, I need you to play this. Blah, blah, blah. I need you to practice this more. Well, I was busy. Just say.
Don't want to hear the excuses.
Just say okay. It's helped me stop some of the I get in that mood and I don't mean to be. I'm old. But then I just learned it's helped me be smiley or happy or just because the kids can say okay and we can come back and approach it later. But 9 times out of the 10, it's gone after the moment.
Right. And there's another thing that goes along with that, making sure that students understand that telling the truth is what you want them to do. I'll let mine know that if you did something wrong and you tell the truth about it and own up to your behavior, 9 times out of 10, I'm not even going to fuss. I'm just going to say, make sure you don't do it again. And then you need to make sure you don't do it again. But don't come in here and not tell me the truth. And I have all the evidence in the world and I'm asking you 4 or 5 times and I'm giving you an opportunity. Then, they may see a different side. But, it's interesting now. There'll be students that come in my office, hey, Dr. Rhoden, I'm not going to lie. This is what I did. I apologize. And I'll go, okay. And then they kind of look at me like, is that it? I'm like, no, you learned your lesson. And the lesson is that you need to be held accountable for your actions. And I think as long as you don't do it again, I'm good.
That's another thing. That's a good point. Because it's funny because I have office me and I have band room me. And I keep trying to teach the kids that you can talk to me in my office as me and we can go in the band room, but I'm going to be band director out there. And so those are actually 2 different versions of me because I can separate the 2. And I'm trying to get even, I always tell the kids, even if you had the worst thing or something happened, we can go in my office and put that aside. And I think that's some of the relationships because I think that's what this is all coming down to, Dr. Rhoden, is the culture of relationships. And so, those are, how do you teach a teacher who's just starting about these relationships? Because, thinking back to when you started, I think, like I said, I started in 1990. I was so worried about not necessarily being my friends, but I wanted to be liked and I used to do things. But now I'm like, nope, not doing that. And so, how have you changed with your relationships over the years?
I don't know. I started teaching. I was 20 for the first month. I was 21 years old when I started teaching. So that was definitely something I had to learn. I was teaching middle school, but I also assisted at high school. And there were students who were 2-3 years younger than me. And so we were, kind of in the same age range. So, I tried to dress older and, try to do my hair older and all of those things. But at the end of the day, as a young teacher, it's just about letting the kids know that you care about them. Ask them about their soccer game, ask them about their birthday party that they had that weekend. If there's something that they do that you don't understand, tell them and then ask them to explain it to you. Why is this important to you? Why is this important to your culture? Why, and I'm not asking to question, I'm asking because I genuinely want to know and I care. And so I think once you do that, you also have to do that with parents. You can't be afraid to call the parents. It's recruiting season now, as we call it, and if someone hasn't signed up, pick up the phone and call the parents. It's probably something that they heard that really wasn't true about, time management or finances or whatever. But you won't know that unless you actually talk to the parents. And it does take a lot of time, but that builds that relationship, and the parents will answer when you call later if you need them for whatever, whether it's help with their child to make sure they're on the right track, or help with the band program or something else. So yeah, I think you have to hit it from both sides, the parents as well as the students.
Has your relationship with like talking to parents changed as you got older? Because I know mine did. When I was young, I thought of them as parents, and now I think
Mhm.
of them as former students because they're about that age.
I have one. I have my first one right now who's I taught her mom and her aunt when I first got to Fayette, and now she's a freshman. So that's I have a band grandbaby in the band right now. But
Yeah,
yeah, actually it is. And I think, when the parents became younger than me, that was like a big deal, for me, like, oh my gosh, my parents are younger than me now. But when they were older, I was a little intimidated at first, um, because I always thought that they would think I wasn't know what I was doing or talking about. But the longer I taught, or even within the school year, I realized that was pretty much all in my head. That,
yeah, it is.
if I, yeah, and I think a lot of young teachers think that too, that sometimes they're not taken seriously and all of that. But sometimes it might be just you thinking that, and it's not really reality, especially if you present yourself with confidence.
Yeah, my school has some rules about, if you're not or if you're failing, or if you're, below a C, you have to call home.
Hmm.
And at first I get such anxiety using the phone. And the funny part is every time I dial and they pick up, I become that guy. And all that anxiety disappears. So I kind of have to talk to myself to remember what it's like once the phone is answered. And
Hmm.
then, what I've run into these days is people don't pick up the phone. So you're constantly leaving message, or you finally get a hold or make an appointment, but to call them. But I would encourage every young teacher out there to go ahead and, interact more with parents, and
Hmm.
they will trust you. Do you do a meeting with parents at the beginning of the year? Do you have a
Oh,
informational
yes.
meeting or a parent meeting?
Absolutely. We have a kickoff meeting on a Sunday night before band camp every year. I know it's like Sunday, but it works for us. It's like at 4 o'clock that Sunday before the start of band camp that Monday. They're able to do all the things, and ask all the questions. I had a mentor to tell me one time, if you have a lot of questions at the end of a meeting, then you haven't run the meeting really well, and you haven't given all the information that you're supposed to give. So I try to do that, and make sure you have, handouts and things afterwards for all the things that they missed, that we had while we were in the meeting. But absolutely. And we try to get the kids and the parents to interact with each other at those meetings too.
That's funny you say that, because I had a parent email me the other day, and it caught me off guard because all of a sudden I had like this, my heart dropped, like I had forgot to do something. But the truth is, you said it. If a parent emails me, I think of it as my weakness of where did I not communicate that? Where
Yeah.
was it not at? But they asked me for like, where was the calendar for the thing? And all of a sudden I just went through this, like I just had it, like I was on a weekend, so I just wasn't thinking. I'm like, is it not on the band calendar? Oh,
Yeah.
yes. And then I forgot, I send out a newsletter, and the newsletter has here's a great idea, folks. And I don't know who taught me this, best one ever. It's a scrolling list of dates that I just delete the ones and I keep adding at the bottom, and it's always correct. And so even if I send
Mm,
it out, oh yeah, that's a 7 p.m. start, at a 7:20 p.m. start, and put like the words, star new on top of it. But that was like, oh my God, no, it's on the band calendar. But I was one of those things I forgot. I view email questions as my weakness. So if I
yeah.
didn't communicate something, like, and that's why I try to encourage it. Make your goal not to get email, not that it's going to happen, but it's because how we communicate. So, and so do you have a newsletter? Do you email, regular meetings? What's your strategies for information?
Absolutely. On Sunday nights, I have a tendency to do this on the weekends, I know. But on Sunday nights, we'll send a newsletter called The Band This Week. And I found that the parents and students totally rely on that, because if I don't send it out, I get all sorts of questions, even though we have an online calendar. that's available 24/7 that they can log on to. That Band This Week comes straight to their phone, either via text or Parent Square or email or whatever it is. And we send it out Sunday so they'll know exactly what their child is doing with the band every single week. So we started that years ago. Now I use the little S'more newsletter
That's what
app
I
thing.
use.
Yeah, and it's so easy because you can just copy paste and, like you said, delete what's old and add the new stuff, and it's pretty easy to do. But yeah, that's one of the main things that helps keep us running, I think, is that weekly newsletter, believe it or not.
Oh, I believe it. I
Yeah.
believe it. I mean, it really did catch me off guard, and it was just because it was a parent that wasn't necessarily always with the band, so it was like a parent that way, checks in from a couple times a year. They're not always around, so it just caught me off guard for a second, and then I went into this panic. But by the way, funny thing you say Parent Square. Here's a nicer, like, Parent Square bought out Remind, and so a friend of mine in Tennessee recommended Remind, and I have been using that since I became a teacher, and then I went to a Parent Square district, and then I had to learn how to use Parent Square because it's not quite Remind. So I'm hoping some of the merging will happen, because the ability to communicate Parent Square is, any type of service that provides one-to-one interaction between parents, students, yourself. Fantastic. Gosh, that's cool. Now you got me on all my brains all thinking about communication. So, so what are the things here? I hate to say this, like you said, 15 days.
Yes.
Oh my God.
15 school days to graduation.
So looking back and reflecting, what would be the biggest thing you would tell yourself starting today?
Oh gosh, I don't know. The biggest thing.
How has Myra's culture changed over a career?
Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to bring people in your band room before it's too late. I think I see this from young teachers too. They want to make sure that things are perfect before inviting people in. And don't do that. They need to be able to help you when it's in the baby stages so you don't develop bad habits. So I think the third thing, and this goes back to the communication thing that we talked about a second ago, don't take it personally if a parent says something that, maybe you should put this in the handbook, or maybe you should, because that maybe they're right. Maybe you did miss something, and it's okay to take, recommendations from parents as well. That doesn't necessarily mean you're doing a bad job. It just means that they may have seen something and it makes sense. You just have to vet all, whether the information is coming from a student, a parent, admin, you just have to vet it, make sure it makes sense for your program, and then decide what to do with it, and then move forward and not spend too much time on that decision-making process.
Yep. Every year I send my syllabus for the future year to my band council, and I put it on Google, and I'm just like, here, just find everything that's changed, different, make suggestions. I always do that for my program too. List of kids' names. Anytime a name's misspelled wrong, I'm like, well, your child was supposed to fix that. So if it was a mistake, it's like my favorite reaction when they realize it's like, and then they go, yes, those are my children. All right. Are you ready for this next?
That's right.
You ready? Are you ready for this next one?
Uh-oh. No.
It has been, here it comes.
Okay.
It has been 54 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The time machine has hit.
Yes.
Dr. Myra Rhoden, you are a fantastic human being. And I always get to like 2% of the things. And I'm so excited I got a chance to finally meet and interact and talk to you. Because now if I get to meet you live, it'll be super fun.
But before we will meet.
Yes, it'll be for me. Yeah. So before you go, because I'm going to have you do your final thought. Is it okay if we share your email, which is right,
sure,
and everyone can see, of course. So I'm not asking like this is a thing. It's MK Rhoden, Rhoden. So it's MK Rhoden at gmail.com. And I'm not spelling gmail.com for those of you out there listening. So it's mkrhoden at gmail.com. But I say this because this actually happened last week. We had a final question, and it came in at the very last minute, and the person sent it as email and CC'd me. So I know that the question got answered because Music for All is like, hey, there was a great question. I said, it got answered. And so I probably should post the answer to those questions. So please email Dr. Rhoden. I'm going to say this. She has a grade 2-3 third band that ends up being a grade 6. We didn't even talk about how to make a band good. We talked about more about the culture. All right. Final thought on culture of your band program for your career. It's your chance.
Oh, the final thought on culture. I think the title of the podcast is Culture Before Content. Yeah. And so the one thing you can't forget is that you have to have the content also. Sometimes you focus so much on the culture that the content part you forget. You have to have the pedagogy. You have to make sure the students are progressing musically as well, but you use culture as a way to make that happen. So that's just a means to an end.
Well, Dr. Rhoden, thank you so much for being here today. You are a dynamo.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed this.
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well. All right, audience, it is that time. I'm excited. Next week, we have Beth Fabrizio. Beth Fabrizio has conducted various honor bands and given master classes and clinics across the United States, Europe, Japan, and Malaysia. She's taught marching bands and drum and bugle corps for over 40 years. She has been the brass caption head for the Carolina Crown Drum and Bugle Corps, brass coordinator with the Pride of Soka from Tokyo, Japan, and brass staff with the Boston Crusaders, the Glassmen, and the Spirit of Atlanta. I am so excited to start diving into more of this. But thank you for coming today and contributing to our culture. This has been Culture Before Content. I'm David Duarte, your host, sponsored by Music for All from a gracious gift from Yamaha. Thanks for coming and hope to see you next week.